Hello, everyone. Hopefully, I see individuals coming in as we get started here with today's presentation. If you can hear me and if I'm clear and visible, just put something in the chat. I would love to just to make sure that I am seen, I am heard. My name is Joshua Jonas, and it's good. Okay, thank you so much. So many of you are saying. Good morning. Morning, Megan. Good morning. Thea, that's a nice name. Sounds good, she says. Great. All right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and just share my screen quickly, and so that you can see a little bit about what I have planned for us today and the direction I would like for us to go. So let me just get that sorted. All right. Because I really want us to jump on in and get everything started. Okay. Okay. If you can see the screen, you will see that there is a QR code that you can scan. If you could please go ahead and scan that. And also, there's also a code at the top of the screen for Mentimeter. I would appreciate you looking into that. All right, let's just jump right into it as people come in. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in the world and whoever is listening. I'm really glad that we have this group here together today, and it's a passion of mine to speak on this topic. And this conversation I would like for us to have is actually something I've been wrestling with for some time now. And let me start by telling a bit about myself and why this topic matters to me. I'm a PhD student in curriculum and instruction with a concentration in educational technology at Baylor University. I'm originally from Antigua and Barbuda in the Caribbean. That's actually where I am right now. And I'm really passionate about digital teacher preparation and educational technology as a whole. And throughout my research, I think I might have found a pattern that I think could help us address some challenges that I believe many of us are seeing, but I actually really want your expertise and your perspectives on whether this makes sense to you, any thoughts you may have, and the real context that you probably are experiencing um, in this entire scenario. So I want this to be a conversation. Please feel free to put productive and helpful things in the chat as we have this conversation together. Don't be shy with that. Talk to me as I talk to you, and I'll be referring to the chat frequently as we work our way through all this discussion in the brief time that we have. Well, before we dig in, I just want to get it started with just a brief poll to see where everybody's heads at, see where we're thinking, and just kind of find out our general understanding. So I have my first question for you is, do you currently feel that, your teachers are confident and well prepared to integrate technology effectively in their classroom instruction? So whether you as a teacher or teachers that you know, the district you're in, the school that you're in, the context that you're in, just go ahead, jump in, let me know how you feel about this. Very simple yes or no question. Do you currently feel that your teachers or even you are confident and well prepared to integrate technology effectively in your classroom? All right. Again, if you're just joining or if you didn't hear my introduction, my name is Joshua Jonas, and the Mentimeter code at the top is where we are right now. And if you would like to join and be a part of what we're doing, just a few questions that we discussed. I'm seeing some answers coming in very, very nicely. And it says 80% of people are saying so far are saying no. That's interesting. Very, very, very interesting. And actually, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I was curious, to be fair, about your honest assessment of where things stand now. But that actually, what I'm seeing here on the screen, and thank you all who are participating, that actually matches up with what I have found when I was working with districts and talking with teachers and my own experiences, 14 years in the classroom. They had invested heavily in devices. Every student had a Chromebook. Teachers had interactive whiteboards, the works. the one I was in at least. But when I observed the classrooms, I saw students typing essays on computers instead of handwriting them, and teachers using smart boards as expensive whiteboards. I've seen many different sides to the coin. And the technology was there, but the transformational use wasn't. And that was the big key difference there, you know. Found it fascinating. And so the question is then, does that seem familiar to any of you? You can put it in the chat, your thoughts, that feeling. Are you seeing similar patterns where they may have access to technology and people may know exactly what to do and what to use, but how is it really connecting with the students and pedagogy and content mastery? Are we just using them for using them sake, or are they really having an effect on helping the students achieve their educational goals? And are the teachers even using the technology at all? Or are they afraid of them? So I mean that finding that balance is fascinating. So listen, you can let me know what you feel concerning that. Are they well prepared? Do they know what to do? Are they scared? You know, what's going on in terms of that entire experience? That's kind of where I was coming from as a practitioner for many years. And that got me thinking about this research that I'm trying to share here with you. You see, digging through this research here, I found some patterns. Now, if you have access to the uh, handout, you probably would. If you don't, refer to the handout right now. It should be in the presentation materials when you first click the link. It's right in that section there. If you would like, I could actually just put it in the chat myself too, just so that we're all on the same page. So I'm going to try and quickly just do that for everyone so that we're all on the same page here. Okay, good. So I think I just popped it there in the chat in case you didn't have the presentation materials before. There it is. So I would like you, as I talk, just follow through with the handout, and you'll see what I'm talking about and referring to as you go along. So I started to do some research and I found some patterns. And if you look at the top of the handout, you see that there's some numbers that really jumped out to me. For instance, 92% of jobs now require digital skills, and those jobs pay 23% more. I thought that was interesting. But here's what concerned me: 56% of new teachers lack confidence using classroom technology. Did some of you know that? I I mean, I experienced it in everyday life, but reading the research about it was just fascinating. And I found a new research. Here's the kicker. I found new research that proves teacher digital competence directly correlates with student academic achievement. There's a correlation between the two. No, I actually want to hear what you have to take your take on this. I mean, let me know what you feel. You can type that in the chat, but here's what I'm thinking. We might not just have a teacher training problem. We might have a systemic preparation gap that's affecting our students' economic futures. We might just have that. That might be the real issue here. Okay, I see someone in the comments is saying here, I live in Oklahoma and our state education system has been in crisis for several years. Oh, I have friends in Oklahoma, and we are hemorrhaging teachers. Oh my. And so the districts are scrambling to find people to put in the classroom. I don't know what percentage now are emergency certified, but it's high. Training, whether tech or otherwise, is a secondary concern. Mm, thank you for that. I appreciate that comment. Feel free to give some more comments as we go along. We're all in this together, and our experiences are valuable in helping me understand more about my research and how I can put this together. But what I'm learning too is that many of us are going through some of the same experiences. So, I understand what you're going through, and it's disheartening to hear that that is the case. Let me run by many of your little scenario. Quick scenario. Imagine you have two similar students. One is taught by a teacher who confidently integrates technology. They use data visualization in math, collaborative digital tools in English, and virtual labs in science. And the other is taught by a teacher who avoids technology altogether because they're not confident with it, they don't want to use it. My question for you is, which student do you think is better prepared for a workforce where 92% of jobs require digital skills? Isn't that fascinating? Isn't that fascinating? Huh. Now, I actually know personally some of my colleagues who are still teaching. One in particular, she's a science teacher, and she talks to me about how using virtual labs in science class um, has revolutionized the way she's taught science. She teaches chemistry in a local Texas district here. I live in Texas, so where Baylor is, and she was talking about how it just, in conjunction with the rest of the work that she's doing in the syllabus and the curriculum that she's using, it's a wonderful supplement that the kids find very engaging. You know, she's always asking me for ideas of other new technologies coming out that will make the virtual experience even better. So my question then to you is, what's your gut reaction to that? Have you seen this play out in your context, and what are your feelings concerning it? All right, we see here, I feel like there are so many teaching tech tools out there. You're right, that is intimidating and overwhelming to decide which tool an educator would need. That is very true. The market is saturated. Then the time investment in learning that tool, then integrating it, uh, may not seem like it's worth making such a change. That is a good point, and we're actually going to touch on that in just a bit. All right. So let's move to our next poll question here. Do you believe the research showing teacher digital competence affects student outcomes? Do you think so? In your experience, do you think that the more a teacher knows, it will affect not only how the student learns, but how the student is able to adapt to the workforce environment in the future? Do you feel like there's a correlation or connection there? Hmm. I see many people, yes, are coming in saying, yes, that's good, that's good. And just based on your responses, I can immediately share with you that there must be some kind of connection there. The connection is, I feel it, I see it. Now I know some of you might be thinking this sounds like more educational research that doesn't translate to reality. But here's what really caught my personal attention. You know, doing research, reading, talking to people, I learned about Finland's approach. And it was just one educator that was talking about his story where fourth graders were creating multimedia presentations about local environmental issues, not just using PowerPoint, but interviewing community members via video calls, analyzing water quality data, and presenting solutions to actual city council members. And then he said that the teacher said to him that we've been doing this systematically since 2014, not just as a special project for class, but as normal curriculum. Hmm. What do you think about that? Does that feel achievable in your context? I know that making scales, you mentioned how difficult it can be. And I've been there too. Finding the right tool to use for the right scenario at the right time, and then having the time needed to learn it. All that's a part of it too. But then when we look at the international perspective, we find that they're finding better ways through professional development to actually help teachers solve a lot of the issues that you just mentioned. For instance, in Estonia, they provide digital training to 20%, at least 20% of their teachers consistently every year. Every single year, they make sure that they get it. Now, what if 20 plus percent of your teachers receive sustained digital training every year? I guarantee you in 5 years, every teacher would have been through systematic training. And when you compare that to our typical approach, which many of you know, I've seen it myself in the US, in the UK, talking to people, that the typical approach is sporadic workshops when we get grants, if we get grants, or, or if we get new technology. And the question then is, which approach do you think creates more confident, competent teachers? See, I'm curious. Like, I'm asking a lot of questions, but I want us to think, what does digital teacher training look like in your districts? You know, and is it a systematic move or a more reactive experience? You're only reacting to a new technology or to a problem rather than having a systematic approach. See, that's exactly what made me think about doing what I'm doing here with this framework concept, this conceptual framework concept. Because based on the research and these international examples, I've been working on this framework I'm calling the Digital Teacher Education for State Success Framework, DTESS, as you see in the handout. And right now, I have at least 4 pillars that I believe are essential in us understanding how we can be more effective with this. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't another training program. And I think it's more of a systems or at least a mindset approach. But I really want your perspective on whether this makes sense or whether it would work in real contexts like ours. You see? That's the context I'm thinking in. So let's go through the pillars quite quickly. And if you have things you want to add or suggest, as I said earlier, feel free, drop that in the chat, and I'll be happy to hear what you have to say on it. The first pillar is technical knowledge. Now, here's my thinking. We're done with the one size fits all training. And I've noticed other countries using a tiered approach, broken down into three. It's basic training for all teachers, digital literacy training, advanced training for subject specialists, and then finally innovation for teacher leaders. That's how I see it. This is also how I was thinking. If you can add to that, that'd be great. So basic training for all teachers, then you have advanced training for subject specialists, and then innovation for teacher leaders. So my question for you is, does that differentiated approach make sense? In your experience, do all teachers really need the same level of digital training? The context would then matter, wouldn't it? Depending on what you're doing, or maybe it doesn't, you know? Trying to find that gap. Okay, we see someone else in the comments. In my experience as an instructional designer, the best instances of faculty being willing to try a new tech tool is when we are working collaboratively on an online course. So that gap there. As an instructional designer myself, working with a lot of teachers, I find that approach the same, right? When we are working collaboratively, and find a gap with alignment in the student learning outcomes. Finding that gap is crucial. Take notes on Megan's point there. It's a very good point. If there's something already missing from the class, the faculty is much more willing to try and fill that gap in a new way, perhaps with new technology. Interesting. You see, as instructional designers, we need to be able to understand what the teacher needs, figure out the gap, because the goal is to actually help the teacher and the student. You see? And here's a story I heard that helped shape my thinking in that same regard. You know, I worked with a district here trying to help them as an instructional designer, and specifically was with a veteran math teacher who was incredibly effective with traditional instruction, but they avoided using technology completely. And I found that the issue was that they felt that the methods that they were using before were too complicated. Now, previous tech training had been basically, this is Google Classroom, that's it. They didn't know anything else. But when we used a tiered approach, we started with how spreadsheet functions could enhance her existing algebra lessons. And she wasn't learning technology, she was learning better ways to teach concepts she already mastered just by more effective instructional design. And within 2 months, she was the most enthusiastic tech integrator just because she finally had someone, a good instructional designer, that was able to connect with her and understand where her needs are, pointing back to what Megan was saying about finding that gap, all right, and making sure that the need is met. We have another comment here. Faculty teachers need to be convinced that the effort put into learning the tech tool will be worth it. True. And the time to teach the tech tool will not take away from the time teaching the concept. No, that's just brilliant. That's very, very true. If they don't feel that way, and it behooves us to make sure that we help them towards that direction, and the tools that we are part of designing and creating are effectual in that regard, then really we're just wasting the teacher's time, because then time is valuable. Here's the next question. You know, what tier in your context, in your belief system, do you believe needs the most attention when it comes to what teachers need out there? And what can then we do, looking from the outside, looking from an instructional design approach, a teacher approach, just looking at the market and asking yourself what matters more? Is it basic digital literacy? Is it advanced integration? Or is it innovation leadership? In your opinion, let me know what you feel. And this is me talking to teachers, working both as a teacher and as an instructional designer in different contexts, and seeing what matters, because I need to understand what matters in order for us to be effectively helpful in all of this. Oh, numbers are jumping up and down with this. This is very, very helpful. Very, 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 very helpful. Hmm. I agree with many of you so far with the direction that you're taking. In essence, all of them are important, they are important. But the responses that you're giving me are even more effectual when we see it there. because it's actually matching a lot of the things that I've been seeing in my own eyes, and I hope this is an eye opener for you as well. Let's jump quickly to the second pillar. All right. This is where I think the real research happens. My research shows collaborative design teams of 3 to 5 teachers working together get much higher implementation rates than individual training. Interesting. So let me paint a picture then and get your reaction. So just imagine then you have a math teacher, a science teacher, and an ELA teacher planning together to create a unit where students use digital tools to do a new project. Let's say similar to the project from beforehand about working towards their local district's watershed program. So that's the plan. That's the project they're working on. So they're analyzing pollution data, they're writing persuasive essays to city council, and they're presenting solutions using multimedia. Same standard, same content, but now students are using digital tools authentically. My question is, which approach better prepares students for those 92% of jobs requiring digital skills? And which approach is better? And what are we doing then as instructional designers to actually direct them in that frame of reference? Hmm. I got to move on. The third pillar, systemic support. And this is usually where I see implementations fail. See it all the time in schools that I've worked with, where individual teacher heroics don't scale, right? I learned about, I remember I learned about this one particular principal in Wyoming who realized that if she wasn't visible during tech integration efforts, teachers assumed it wasn't really a priority. So she started doing 5-minute classroom visits, specifically during times when teachers were trying new digital approaches, not to evaluate, just to support. And she told me, right, that when I spoke to her about it, that my presence said this matters more than any email I could send. I've heard that same thing from many other superintendents and principals before too. That just being there let them realize that the teachers need to be more involved in it. And the implementation rates went from 30% all the way to 85%. So then, what's our take on that? How can then now we then make sure that we help with some of the biggest challenges that they face? For instance, this is my next quick poll here, and you all are doing such a great job. Thank you for being here and just helping me work my mind through all of this. All right. What is your weakest element in this getting people involved in things like this? What's the weakest support element that you found, you've seen, you've heard? Because again, we're trying to understand what's going on here. Is it principal engagement? Is it tech support? Or is it dedicated planning time? Which do we feel is the biggest challenge? Again, they're all challenges. I've literally gone through them all. But which do you think is some of the biggest issues that we face in that? And I'm curious about what your thoughts are on it. Okay, right now it's kind of 60-40. It's jumping between 50-50 and 60-40, specifically with principal engagement and dedicated planning time. Personally, I thought I'd get a little bit more love with tech support, but hey, look, if that's you guys' experience, then sure. All right. So those actually results, they're quite interesting, right? The fourth pillar that I see in all of this that's drawing from that, and I'm watching my time here, so if I'm going a little fast, forgive me. You can again draw from the handout. Everything I'm saying in the handout is seen there. Is economic alignment. That this is what I think makes this framework different from other digital learning initiatives I've seen. For instance, here's a scenario so you can picture it in your mind. All right. How do we know? Let's say your school board asks you, or let's just say you're working with a teacher and they're asking you the question, how do I know that what we're using is going to be actually effectual towards preparing students for real jobs? You see, with most programs, they talk about test scores, they talk about engagement, and how this particular tool was designed for the purpose of engaging the students, and how if we adjust these few elements and these features, that they will increase this, and the test scores will go up, and the students will be more engaged. But what if we could actually say that we have partnered with regional employers to identify priority digital competencies And our assessments measure transferable skills, and our students can actually demonstrate problem-solving abilities that translate directly to workplace success. What if we can actually do that? What if in the designing of our products, we can say that working with teachers, finding those gaps, looking at those areas that need change, and how we all can collectively work together will help us get to a point where what the end result is that students are now more effectively trained to go out there into the workplace. So the question is then, now, when you look at when you meet some of these teachers and we're talking with them and we're connecting with them, I suspect some of you may be thinking, well, some of them have tried a lot of these things before. In fact, I've been a part of designing a lot of these things before. Um, what do we do from here out? I think ultimately it's about we need to be thinking along the lines of, well, what does the teacher need? I think Megan said it best earlier on. And if I pronounce the name right, Althea made the same point as well too. Is there sustained training in the tools we're developing or the tools teachers are using, plus collaborative design, plus principal engagement, plus workforce alignment? And my hypothesis is that most digital initiatives fail simply because they're not systemic. That's what I think at the end of the day. And so I say that to say simply that I just thought to myself, if we can be effective in trying to suggest to them like a 30-day action plan, which I have in the handout there, of things they can do each week, that we can suggest to them to effectively um, help them both from the teacher perspective and the instructional designer perspective. This is what I think you should do, and versus this is what I have done. And from my own teaching concepts, because I've watched it happen. People have worked within that context where from week one, we're identifying, like Megan said earlier, we're identifying exactly what how we're going to work together. What's the problem here? Who's working with me? How we're working together. In week two, then we're seeking then to enhance the existing model, whatever it may be, with data analysis tools. And in week three, we're piloting new ideas and testing it to see how it works. And in week four, we're then presenting it fully to the entire department to make sure it's something that we can go forward with. Is it ambitious? Could be. Is it not ambitious enough? Depends on who you're talking to. Well, my gut reaction is that we need to actually make some change. One final one, and then I'm done. Is I have there as I mentioned the 30 a kind of 30-day kind of process of what they could do and how they could sustain it. If you know teachers that would love to try it, see what it's like, jump into it. And again, me being on both sides of the coin, I found that these are all different things that they should do. But then what can they realistically start next Monday? What can they say? You know what, we need to think about these things and reflect on these things. Now, based on a lot of the responses, I see here that immediately resource audit comes to place. And I can see why at an instructional design network conference, why that would be there as well too. And I appreciate that. And that is a powerful one. That stood out to me as well, too. Understanding that this is something we need to address. But finally, before I'm done, I'll say this. I think one of the biggest barriers to systemic implementation is what I like to call the year two implementation dip. That's when enthusiasm fades, and you may know it too, you've seen it, and old habits return. And my answer would be building peer support networks. That's where we as instructional designers can come into play. Not only with our networks, but in engaging deeply with teacher networks too, because we're working together. We have to work together so that can sustain motivation beyond the initial excitement. That's the goal of this. And so when we're doing this and connecting this, we must understand that the goal must be so that we can have sustained funding, because if we have this approach, this systemic approach, and there are systemic results that come from it that are effectual for the students, then we can advocate for more funding because the results are there before us. So before I wrap up, I'm just about done. Let me pose one final question to you. All right. Is this doable? Can we have deeper conversations about this? Can we then have deeper connections? Sometimes a lot of these things are just surface area stuff that we say we talk about, but don't just necessarily do. Things that we want to do, but we don't have the energy or the resources. I get it. I've been there. I understand. But we need more change because based on the data, based on the research, the correlation is clear that the better we are at designing and the better the teachers are implementing, the better the students are, not just in front of you, but for them in their future as a whole. And in my ideal world, I'd want to say our students can adapt to any digital tool, they can solve complex problems using technology, and the students can demonstrate competencies that employers actually value. Let me know what you think about that, and let me know if, in your particular context, that's something that you've seen in your instructional design content, in your teacher context, whatever it may be. But I feel like as we continue to explore these things, it's not something we can ignore, but actually it's something that we can continue to be effective on both now and eventually for the future. But yes, thank you all for listening to me. I know that I may have gone a little fast. If you have any questions for me, anything that you would like to share, to suggest, to mention at all, just my email is in the presentation materials area, that area where you came in and you had the link. You can give me your opinion on certain things, some improvements, some thoughts, some suggestions. I am open to that because I'm here to grow, you know. And thank you, Megan, for that. I like the emphasis on alignment with outcomes and competencies. Thank you for this presentation, and Hado. I appreciate that a lot. I'm trying to do my best to try and figure this out and be as helpful as I can to the community as a whole and as an instructional designer as well too. The more that we can be effective in our design approach, the better off we can have students and the better off we can have teachers and may probably hopefully make some real change around here. So that's all. That's for me. And thank you again for listening to me and for the time that you gave me during this session.